Article 2. State parties must ensure all rights apply to children regardless of their age, race, religion, gender, wealth, or birthplace. Article 6. All children have the right to a life of fullness. Article 19. Governments should ensure children are protected from violence and neglect. Article 27. All children have the right to a quality standard of living that meet their mental and physical standards and should be helped if they cannot reach this themselves. Article 28. All children have the right to an education. Article 35. Governments must protect children from being abducted. Article 36. Children must be protected from all forms of activities that can harm their development. Children who break the law should not be treated cruelly and not imprisoned with adults. They should also be able to contact their families. These are some of the articles that are stated in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And unfortunately, these rules are implemented for specific children in specific parts of the world. But when it comes to our children here in the Middle East, and specifically Palestinian children, the world becomes blind, deaf, and silent. Let's think and imagine this together. Imagine your 12-year-old child gets abducted, or if you want to call it arrested. Arrested right in front of your eyes, and you cannot do anything about it. Imagine soldiers invade your home, your safe home, and decided to take away your own child to an unknown destination, and you cannot be there for him. You cannot do anything about it. And you cannot contact him, you cannot know anything about his situation after he's being arrested. You can't hold him, you can't hug him, you can't wipe his tears, you cannot stop his screams or make him feel safe and tell him everything is gonna be okay. Imagine your beloved child is taken away. He doesn't know where he's being taken to, what's going on, or why. He's disoriented, he's lost. Imagine your beloved child is forced to be in solitary confinement in these cells, alone, cold, afraid, crying, begging, and you cannot be there for him. Are we talking about kids here? Children? Yes, we are. But we're not talking about American kids, Australians, French, Swiss, British, or even Ukrainian kids. We are talking about the only children in the world who are systematically prosecuted through military rather than civilian courts. We are talking about those forgotten children on this forgotten territory. Those children who lost their childhood the moment they're born under the Israeli occupation. We're talking about Palestinian children. 180 Palestinian children are currently imprisoned in Israel. Imagine this happened in the United States of America. 180 American children are in prison, and for reasons such as throwing stones. The vast majority of these kids have been detained while the Israeli army invaded their homes or villages or at the Israeli checkpoints. Each year, approximately 500 to 700 Palestinian children are prosecuted in the Israeli military courts. The conviction rate in these military courts is 99%. The most common charge is throwing stones at the Israeli army, which can lead to several years in prison. The majority of these children report being interrogated without a parent or legal guardian, being forced to confess to crime and being subjected to abuse or degrading treatment during arrest and interrogation and in prison. I'm now strolling in Al-Far'a prison, which was active and controlled by the Israeli authorities in the 80s and 90s. Behind these doors and these walls, many Palestinian children were imprisoned and tortured. It's now empty, but I almost could hear the screaming, crying, and begging of these children. More than half of the children serve their sentences in prisons inside Israel, where it's very difficult for their relatives to get permission to visit them. So imagine those Palestinian children are abducted from their homes at night, blindfolded, with their hands painfully bound behind their backs, and they are not told why they're being arrested. After their arrest, children are transferred to interrogation centers, such as this one, where they report being forced to lay face down on the metal floor of the military vehicles, denied bathroom breaks, deprived of food and water, and physically assaulted. Imagine those children in the Israeli military detention system face inhuman treatment such as beatings, strip searches, psychological abuse, weeks in solitary confinement, and being denied access to a lawyer during interrogations. There is no possible justification for setting dogs on children, beating them, or shackling them to the metal chairs. Whatever they are accused of, regardless of their guilt or innocence, these children must be treated first and foremost as children with all the special protections this entails. Unlike millions of Palestinians, our childhood was very different, very difficult. Growing up in the alleyways of our refugee camps, we survived several wars. We were unarmed, unprotected, and waiting for death. The majority of us witnessed the beating, the abusing, and in many cases, the shooting and killing of our relatives and friends. We grew up on the smell of tear gas. Houses around us were bombed and demolished by the Israeli army. We grew up with no sense of security or safety at all. For more than 70 years, the world has stayed silent about all the human rights violations that occurred here in Palestine, especially those against Palestinian children. However, the world goes crazy when a child is being harmed in any country that's considered their allies. For instance, in this current war against Ukraine, the world news has not stopped reporting the suffering of the Ukrainian children during the Russian attacks. And of course, we are against any violations against any children on this planet. And we support children's rights everywhere. But what about our human rights? Our basic rights? Or perhaps we're not considered humans to begin with? Aren't Palestinian children like the rest of the children around the world? Why are our children being ignored in the Western media? Why we barely see any news or hear any government's objections against, for example, the massacres that happen in Gaza, the killings of thousands of children there? No child should be experiencing such brutality at the hands of any authorities. Palestinian children should be treated like the rest of the children of the world, like American children, like European children. Imagine you're Palestinian and your beloved children are at risk all the time under this occupation. How would you feel? What would you do?